Gosh. All right. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. We're going to finish chapter 11. If you noticed, I extended the due date. Obviously, it can't be due tonight because there's more we still had to cover. So you have more time to finish chapter 11, and then we'll do chapter 12 next week. So I did record the lecture last class. So if you missed it, everything's working. I'm making sure everything's working now going forward. I know you guys have a lot going on, so I want to make sure it's really accessible. So we're talking in this first part of today about the joint processing costs and whether or not we should sell at our split off point or process further. In this decision making, we're at a point where we've already done the first round of processing. So we've already turned our whole tuna into tuna fillets and byproducts. And that process has a cost. And in the book, they call it joint processing costs. So let's say that it costs $10 to process the whole tuna into the fillets and the byproducts. In chapter 6, we learned about how to allocate those costs to these two products. And we were using drivers. If you don't remember, you'll just have to trust me that we did do it. We would do like maybe based on the number of pounds that we produced, we'd say, okay, so 10 out of 14, like the fraction 10/14 of the $10 goes to the tuna fillets, and 4/14 of the cost goes to the byproducts. So we could split the cost between the two different products. So this one maybe would get $8, and then the other one maybe would get $2. All right, these costs are sunk costs. We still have to allocate them because we need to know how much the product costs for our cost of goods sold and our inventory balances. We still need to know what the actual costs are. But for right now in chapter 12 with our decision making, we are going to be making this decision at the point in time where these split off point products already exist. So any costs that we had to incur to make the split off point products, it's already gone. So we don't need to include that in the analysis. What we do need to include in our analysis is whatever we could sell these for, so the revenue of the split off product, and then decide if we want to process more, do like extra work, and incur more costs. So those additional costs are what we call the separable costs. Those, we have to consider that. And those separable costs are what's going to separate these into other products. And then the revenue from these that we might have. And the differences between this option of sell as is or process further, the difference between the revenue from sell as is and the revenue of process further is called our incremental revenue. That's the next step in the process. So on the next page, let me add a couple things here. We did do this last time, but I want to add a couple items. So the relevant costs, this question is asking about costs, but there's also revenues that are relevant. So relevant items are the sales price at split off and the sales price after further processing. So I want to add those two things on there. The only thing that is not relevant to the decision making are the joint product costs. And the reason they're not relevant, the reason they're sunk is because they will exist under both options. Whether we sell it as is or sell it after further processing, those costs will be in both columns. So we don't include them. But we do have to include those costs when we're actually calculating the price of our product or the cost of goods sold. So that's just a little review from last time. Anyone have a question on that? Okay, let's go now to the next page. So this next page, it starts with what was originally a multiple choice question, but I broke it up. So I want you guys to go through and label each one of these statements as true or false. And so I'll read them, you guys write your answers down, and then you all tell me with thumbs up, thumbs down if it's true or false. So the first one says, a common decision facing management is whether to sell products at the split off point or to sell these products after further processing. True or false? No, don't say it yet, but yeah, it is true. You got it right. Good job. I'll read them all and then we'll do all of them. Okay, second one. The allocation of joint or common production costs to individual products helps management determine which products should be processed beyond the split off point. And C, costs incurred up to the split off point are referred to as joint production costs. And D, the decision as to whether individual products should be sold as is or processed further is made by comparing incremental revenues and incremental costs. And then E, for financial reporting purposes, output or inventory is costed at the sum of the separable processing costs plus an allocated share of joint production costs. Okay, so A is true. That one is true. Except I would also accept false, but the book says it's true. I don't know if it's that common. It is a decision that could be faced by a manufacturer who has that kind of ability, I assume. So I don't think every business faces this decision. But if they're a manufacturer, they probably do. So I guess that one's true. All right, for B, thumbs up, thumbs down, up if it's true, down if it's false. Go. I see thumbs down. Okay, good. That one is false. Yes. The allocation of joint production costs to individual products helps management determine which products should be processed beyond the split off point. So what that question is asking is, are sunk costs relevant? That's what it's asking. That's what it's saying. The joint production costs, which are sunk costs, help management determine, which means that they're useful in the decision. So no, they're not. They're sunk. Okay, so let's skip to E. For financial reporting purposes, inventory is costed at the sum of separable processing costs plus the joint production costs. True or false? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I see thumbs up. Yes, that one is true. So B and E go together and they're very similar with one tiny difference. And you can see it here in this gray box down at the bottom. And the difference is that B is asking about joint production costs for decision making, and E is asking about joint production costs for financial reporting. So yes, we still need the joint production costs for financial reporting. We have to have them. because we have to include those costs in our cost of goods sold. Those are direct materials, those are direct labor. They're still part of the product cost. And we did that part, the second one, we did that in chapter 6. But now we're in chapter 11. And in chapter 11, we're talking about decision making where it's not relevant anymore. So it's two completely different scenarios. All right. How about C? Costs incurred up to the split up point are joint production costs. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, yes, true. That is true. And that is what we call them. And then the decision as to whether individual products should be sold as is or processed further is made by comparing incremental revenues and incremental costs. Yes, thumbs up. Yes, that is also true. So the original question I took this from was a multiple choice question that said which one is false. And I just thought it would be better to go through each one individually. I didn't change the wording too much. B was the correct answer in the original question. But I think I prefer to ask each individual question separately to give you guys the chance to evaluate each one separately. It's a lot of reading for one multiple choice question, I felt. So anyone have a question on any of that? What the word incremental means? Just to reiterate, that means that's the next step. So if you had 2 job offers, one was for $18 an hour, one was for $25 an hour, the incremental income between the two is $7. It's the difference between the two. Not technically, but that's how they use it in this chapter. It's used the same as the word differential. So it's the difference between them. Okay. Here is our first example. Split corporation manufactures products X, Y, and Z from a joint production process. Joint costs are allocated to products based on relative sales values of the products at the split off point, which is a statement that would have mattered to us in chapter 6. So we would have had to, in chapter 6, we would have had to calculate the sales value at the split off point. And I'm not 100% sure, I didn't get this question from chapter 6. We would have had to evaluate the sales value at split off point, calculate the percentages, and then allocate the joint costs to each product based on their relative sales values. That's what we would have done in chapter 6. And that's why it's asking us for the sales value of the split off point. And is that it? Is that all it's asking us for? Yeah, it is. Okay, so I need to work on these notes a little bit and fix them up a little bit. So here's a couple things I want to do. I want to label all these as units here so that that's super clear that those are all units, and that these are all dollars. And I also want to make sure that I indicate to you guys that these are all additional or separable processing costs, and that these are the allocated joint processing costs. All right. For this particular chapter, these allocated joint processing costs, these are all sunk. So we don't even need to look at those. What we're going to be looking at are these other 3 rows. The sales value at split off, that would be money coming in, additional costs if we process further, and sales value if we process further. All right, so first thing we need to do is fill in this question mark. So all these add together to make 622. So 622 minus 240 minus 280 is 102. All right, so this is the total value here. This is the answer to that question. The sales value at the split off point is 102. All right, now what we need to do is what it says here in D. Compare the incremental revenues and incremental costs. That's what we need to do. So we need to calculate the incremental revenues and calculate the incremental costs. Cool. All right, so let's go do that. So let's go down here. So we've got our next row. I'm going to call this the incremental revenues. And so basically for this, what I need to figure out is the difference in this number here, the sales value at split off, and the sales value after further processing. Stop jumping around. That's what I want to figure out. What's the difference between those two numbers? So don't do math in your head, but I think this is 18. Is that right? 28. Yeah. Don't do math in your head. And then look at me. I just wrote 18 again. All right. And this one is 48. Yeah. Okay. And then this one, I'm really not going to do this one in my head. Well, 523, 518, 521, 521. Okay. So now we've got the incremental revenues. We just need the incremental costs. The cool thing about this is that the incremental costs are the separable processing costs. So that's these right here. So that's pretty cool. So here's what we've got. We've already made products X, Y, and Z. So like basic level. We've made a basic product X, a basic product Y, and a basic product Z. And we can sell those products at the prices here. So that's, we can, if we don't do anything, we can make $622,000 of revenue. Okay, cool. So we can do that. We know what the costs were, but it doesn't matter because we already spent that money. So it's gone. So we can't change that. So our option is to sell those right now, the basic level, or we could make like the deluxe version. Like we can make like Super X, Super Y, and Super Z. So which ones do we want to make? Which one's going to make more money? There are other considerations, like maybe having a bigger product mix might be better and bring in more customers. But we're not looking at that right now. What we're looking at is which will make the most money. So Z, if we, Super Z will make an extra $28,000. But it'll cost an extra $44,000. So basically what we're saying is if we spend $44,000 making Super Z out of our regular Zs, we'll get back 28. Okay, that's like a bad deal. Don't give away 44 to get 28. That's not a good plan. Don't do that. So we shouldn't make any Super Z. Why? We can spend $63,000 to make an extra 48. Yeah, also bad deal. Don't do that. Because we'd lose money if we sell Super Y. Super X, we spend 71 to make 520. Okay, yeah, obviously that's the one we want to do. That's the right choice. That's the one that's the best option. So if all we care about is financial result, we should make regular Y, regular Z, and Super X. Maybe we want to also have regular X too, but we don't necessarily have to have that. But a customer comes in and wants a Super Y. We're like, yeah, no, we don't have Super Y. That's too expensive to make Super Y, so you can't have that. If you want something super, the only choice you have is Super X. We sell Super X, but no Super Y, no Super Z. You can't have that. And so that's our sell as is or process further decision. So yes, process further, sell as is, sell as is. That's our decision. And it's financial analysis only. Whether or not we have a regular X is something we would probably have to talk to the marketing and sales department about. So maybe we could say, how many people come in to buy regular X because they like the price, but then they see how cool the Super X is, and so they switch. So if we are bringing in a lot of customers and we're able to upsell, then maybe we should offer regular X as an option just to bring in those customers, and so we can upsell them to the Super X. If we're not doing that very often, then don't even sell regular X because it's not making us as much money as the Super X would. So now you guys, here's the next page is an entirely new setup. It looks exactly the same, but it has different numbers. So I want you guys to go through this one and tell me which ones we should process further and which ones should be sold as is. Does anyone have a number for the sales value of X? That question mark, anybody calculated it? 340? Okay, thank you. All right, somebody tell me the incremental revenue for X. Nobody? What are you guys doing out there? 5? Yeah, 5,000. Yeah. Anybody else? Why? Yeah. 124, 200. And Z? Yeah. 111. Okay. Anybody want to change any of those? Yeah. For which one? Why? What do you want it to be? 52? Okay, so we have another 52. Yeah? Z should be 54. All right. Anybody want a second? I need a second opinion on either one of these two. Anybody want to vote for 111 or 54? Votes for 111. Votes for 54. Oh, okay, 54. All right. All right, and then how about the Y? Votes for 52 and 124. Oh, okay. All right, that's cool. We're fine. It's all good. Okay. I appreciate the people who respond and go out on a limb and try, even if everyone disagrees with them. I think it's far more commendable than everyone who just sits all safe and sound in your seats and doesn't say anything. You're good. Thank you for saying something. I appreciate your response. All righty. So let's look now at the comparison between the incremental revenue, which is, or the differential revenue, the difference between the two revenues, and the incremental cost or the extra cost. So the X, we'd spend 44 to get 5. Y, we spend 36 to get 52. And Z, we spend 26 to get 54. So in this scenario, I would say no, yes, yes. Anyone disagree with that? Because we're now comparing the costs and the revenues. So there's another value we could calculate. We could also calculate the incremental income or profit or something like that, which would just be the incremental revenue minus the incremental costs. So for this one, it would be negative 39, like the net income if we do it. And this one would be 52 minus 36, so 16. And this one would be 54 minus 26, 28. Like that. So that's another number that you could calculate in order to answer this question. So the question down below says, based solely on the relevant cost analysis, relevant cost and revenue, I guess we did both, which of the three products should be processed by split beyond the split off point? So Y and Z. So if you went to their store, you would be able to buy regular X and maybe regular Y and maybe regular Z. But if you wanted super X, they'd be like, no, there's no super X. That's not one of the choices. If you want something super, you have to get super Y or super Z, because making super X is too expensive, so we don't make super X. We only make super Y, super Z. So super stuff, no deal. So that would be our decision. Are you guys okay with this? You all right? Okay. This is the analysis of that down here at the bottom. It's the answers. So you can see how it's got the 39, the 16, and the 28. It's the same answers down there. Okay, so let's go down to this next page. Now this one is a tricky, I want to update the key. So I'm going to type in some stuff. Okay, so the key on this one is very, very short on information. It just has an answer on it. So on this question, I'm going to talk you through my problem solving process. In the last class, I had a couple of questions from students like, how will we know? How do we do that? How would we understand? How do we approach it? So it's not going to be the same every time. And so I'm going to show you how I would solve this problem. Just reading it straight out, this was how I'd approach it. My primary approach is read the information they're giving me and start making a table. In accounting, we use Excel a lot to analyze information. So I'm going to pull up Excel and I'm going to just start typing the information from the problem into Excel. It doesn't have to be in Excel. You could do it in a table in Word. And I did that in the last class, but then I had to pull the calculator up. It was fussy. So I'm going to do it in Excel just to make it a little bit easier. But you'll be able to see like my thought process as I go. So let's see. I want to put this one. What I really want is like this. There we go. All right, so the first part of the question says, Mantle Company manufactures 2 lines of washing machines, regular and deluxe. The contribution margin per unit of a regular model is 110, and the contribution margin for the deluxe model is 175. Don't always show the ribbon. Well, I can't get it to go away. Fine, I'll do it side by side. So when I first read that, I think, all right, it's telling me the contribution margin per unit. And I know what the contribution margin per unit means. I do know a formula or something about that. I know what it is. If I have my sales, I'm going to do a row down. If I have my sales and I subtract my variable costs, then I will get my contribution margin. And that's in total. If I want to do it per unit, then I know that I can do my price. Oops. And then I can subtract my variable cost per unit, and that will give me my contribution margin per unit. So that's the things I know about CMU. I know that. And that's the information that it's giving me. And I haven't even read the rest of the question, but I know what contribution margin per unit is. So I'm going to write down that little formula just to contextualize it for myself. So I'm like, okay, so here's what's coming. CMU. What is CMU? Oh yeah, I know what CMU is. It's price minus variable cost per unit. Okay, so just so now I know kind of where I'm at. It says regular is 110 and deluxe is 175. So that must mean that I have 2 columns here. So regular and deluxe. The problems in textbooks and in real life, funny enough, oh my gosh, stop. Sometimes are usually set up in such a way that you can lay them out in a table. Your table that you made all by yourself might not look like this, but if I said make a table of information, I bet there wouldn't be more than 3 versions that I get in from all 60 students, because there's just really not that many ways you can lay out this information. It's pretty standardized, and the way they present it lends itself to making a table pretty easily. Okay, so I know that I've got that information. I don't know what the price of the VCU is. I assume if that's important that they'll tell me. They haven't yet, so I don't know. I'll just wait and see if they give me more information. But that's all the information that I have so far. So I'll keep reading. The company has 2 departments. Dang it, there's more. Assembly and testing. Okay, so I could either put those as columns or rows, but I don't want to do, I genuinely, this would be what I think. I'd say, well, I don't want to do columns because that's too wide. So I'll do assembly and testing as rows. And I don't know what it's going to tell me about it, but I'll put it in there. So now I'm constructing like a grid for myself. So the way I think, all of these words are the worst. And when you do a PhD, you have to make a bunch of statistical tables, and then you have to write out what they say in words. And that was why I don't write research papers anymore. Because I'm more than happy to do all the statistics anybody wants. I'll do that all day and night and be happy as a clam. But the second they want me to explain it in writing, I'm like, peace, I'd rather not have a job. I can't, I just can't. I can explain it verbally, that's fine. But writing is not where I'm good. And sometimes people say, I'm just not that good at math. And I'm like, I totally get it, because I hate writing paragraphs. So we're sames. All right, so assembly testing, I've got this model here that I'm looking at. The regular model requires 3 hours to assemble. The Deluxe model requires 4 hours to assemble. Okay, so this one is 3 hours, and this one is 4 hours per unit. So now that's a little bit more information. So that's assembly per unit. I assume it's also going to tell me the testing per unit. I don't know. So I've got the 3 and the 4. Okay, and I'll keep reading. The total time available in assembly is 12,480 hours. All right, so now they're giving me it. So this information was in units, but now they're giving me assembly, like total hours. So this is assembly in units. So I want to do assembly, and this is total. So I need to have a different row for that, because I don't want to mix the units together. So 12,480. I will put hours on it. Okay, testing department. It requires 2.5 hours for regular and 1.5 hours for the deluxe. Okay, so this is 2.5 hours, and this is 1.5 hours. And then testing total available, it's probably going to tell me that too. 6,240 hours. All right. I can already tell what it's going to ask me. But if I read it, it says, based on this information, the optimum production plan. Production plan? What the heck is a production plan? I don't care what it is. I'm going to tell it how many of each one of these to make. Yeah. Oh, yes, thank you. 110, you are right. Thank you, I appreciate that. I would have got it wrong. Okay, very good. So this problem is asking about the decision of whether I should make regular or deluxe. That's what it means by optimum production plan. What's the number of units of regular and deluxe I should produce to maximize my profits? Anybody have any ideas of something I could do to help start solving that problem? We've got some constraints and some information about the CMU. We can see that deluxe makes more money. The CMU is higher, but it takes more time to assemble and less time to test. So if we didn't have the assembly and testing, I'd say make deluxe, because it makes more money. So what is something you guys think we could calculate that might help us decide which one to make? Or an approach or anything? Anybody? Nobody? It's okay, you don't have to. Last class, one student said maybe we could do a system of equations and like maximize it. Yeah, that would actually work really well. Luckily, the textbook isn't that complicated in this chapter, so we actually don't have to do that. It gives us easier questions that don't need a system. So, any ideas? When we have constraints, what we want to do is maximize our income for each unit of constraint. So in this problem, the constraint or the limit is hours. So we have a limited number of hours that we can spend assembling and a limited number of hours we can spend testing. So what we want to do is we want to make as much money per hour as possible, right? So I think for me, the problem is here, because this one makes more money, but it takes more hours. So what I really want to know is how much money per hour am I making for regular and how much money per hour am I making for deluxe? I think that's the real question here. Here, I see deluxe is faster. And I know it makes more money overall. So this one, it doesn't really matter to me that much because it's faster anyway. But I think what I could do is I can calculate how much money I'm going to make per hour assembling the products. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to do a CMU per hour. So this is going to be 110 divided by 3. And then this one will be 175 divided by 4. Okay, so this one is the best, just based on CMU. Oh, I should put total up here. And this one is the best in CMU per assembly hour. So for testing, I don't really have to do this, but I might as well. All right. There we go. So basically, it's coming up deluxe all the way down. Deluxe has the highest CMU. Deluxe makes the most money per assembly hour. Even though they take more hours, we make more money per hour. So it's way better to be doing deluxe at any hour of the day because it's making more money in assembly and it's making more money in testing. So definitely deluxe is the way to go. So as the accounting department, we would say, hey, production, deluxe is the moneymaker. You want to sell as much deluxe as possible. And they're like, okay, we'll sell as much deluxe as possible. So how many deluxe can we make? That's all the hours we have available. So how many total units can we make? It'll be 12,480 divided by 4 hours per each unit. 3,120. That's how many units we can make. And then for this one, we could make more, but we don't care about that because we're not making that one. So that's the most we can make. And this one down here, we can calculate that as well, but because it takes less time, we're going to be able to make a lot more of those, but we can still calculate it. So this is going to be 6,240 divided by 1.5. So this one's 41.6. Oops. Oops. There we go. Alrighty, so this is the constraint here. That's the number we can make. We can't make that many because even though we have enough time to test that many units, we don't have enough time to make that many because of the assembly. So the assembly hours are the constraint here. That's the maximum number of deluxe models that we can make is 3120. That's the answer to the question is 3,120 units of deluxe. So this is what we'll make. Now, that doesn't mean we can sell that many. We might not be able to sell 3,120. We can make that many, but it doesn't help us to make them if we can't sell them. So now we have a new question. Now what we need to do is go to marketing and sales and say, hey guys, what's the most deluxe we can sell? And they'll go, ooh, you could probably sell infinity. As many as you make, we can sell them. And we'll be like, bam, we'll do it. Get ready to sell 3,120 units of deluxe. That's how many we can make. Sales goes, okay, we're on it, and they'll sell them. What if sales says we can't sell that many? That's wild. We can only sell 1,000 units max. And that would really be pushing it. I don't know if we can even do 1,000, but let's estimate we can sell 1,000 of deluxe. We say, okay, how many of regular can you sell? And they're like, oh, everybody wants regular. We can sell tons of regular. We'll say, fine. Now we know what to make. We'll make 1,000 deluxe, and we'll spend all the rest of the time on regular. And that would be our sales mix or our production plan, our optimum production plan. So make as many as you can, sell of the most profitable, and then find the next most profitable, make as many of those as you can sell, and the next most profitable, make as many of those as you can sell. And just go down the list. And that is your sales mix or your production plan that you're gonna manufacture. Now, in this case, like in the XYZ upgrade situation, we might have customers that come in looking at the regular, but then when they see the deluxe, they love it and they want to upgrade. If that happens a lot, then it might actually, if we want to sell more deluxe, we might actually make regular so that we can draw customers in to upsell. And so that's a new analysis. So now we say, okay, so hey sales, how many people come in to buy a regular and you are able to upsell them to deluxe? And they'll be like, oh, like 50 customers do that. And we'll be like, okay, cool. So we got to make sure that we're going to make at least 50 regulars so we can bring those people in and that they think it's available. And it is. They could buy it if they want, but we want to be able to upsell them to the deluxe and make even more profit than we normally would. So there's a lot of decision making in the whole process, but the financial analysis is always with the goal of make the most money. What if making deluxe destroys the planet and regular doesn't? Well, that's another analysis. That's not the financial analysis. So this isn't the end all be all best choice option always. It's just the most profitable option. All right, do you guys have a question about that? So I will update the key to have this information in it. Okay. We didn't get to this last section in the last class, so I'm gonna pause the video and then start a new one so they can get this last little bit.